Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. As you know, I have been doing a series of webinars now for are we 3, 4? I guess we'll be starting our 4th year in March.
Yeah, COVID status.
Which is we started in 2020, and so this is pretty crazy. I just want to let you know that the Whole Rider course, my online course where you have 2 live sessions a week with me for 8 weeks, enrollment is going to open tomorrow. So if you want to know more information about the Whole Rider course, simply go to thewholerider.com and you can learn more, and hopefully you'll join me and transform your riding for 2024. Today, my guests are Sharon and Laura Wilsie. I don't know what, this is like the 12th webinar we've done together, and I've missed them. We haven't talked in a long time, so I am really, really happy to see you guys and catch up with you. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Wendy.
Yeah, it's really good to be back.
It's always a pleasure to share space with you.
Yeah. And I'm just going to put that in the link. Okay, so we're going to start with what have you guys been up to since I talked to you last? Because, it's been so long.
I don't know if we have that kind of time.
Really? Has it been that? Okay, so you bought a farm and your horses were getting used to the farm and you were learning lots of things about horses getting used to a new place. I remember that.
Yes. Okay. So really, the biggest thing is that we started being able to have clinics here. And that has been a huge shift because our horses absolutely love to teach. So when people come here, they kind of go for like a deep dive that was different for us. Because we're used to going out to places. You have to get to know the horses there.
Yeah.
And then the horses are always like, I've got all these things to talk about. And so it's really cool and interesting. But it's not the same as people coming here. And the horses are ready and like, hey, what you got? What's on your table? What am I going to talk to you about? Because our horses are just going to bring people in deep, right? And so
they're used to talking, right? They're used to having conversations.
It's more about the human coming and visiting our horses and getting to know more about it's a self-exploration, really, what ends up happening.
This is so cool.
When we go and travel, it's like, hey, horse, how you doing?
And the horse is like, I got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so we really, and it's kind of interesting when we do travel, and we do end up working with basically over a 4-day span. We do work with like the same groups of horses. And so the first day typically is the horse is like, it's all about me. And so then we have to be like, it's all about you, horse. Then day 2, it's all about the person.
They're like, all right, now that I got it off the table, I didn't talk about that.
And then
so before we get too deep into this, I just realized that there might be somebody watching this webinar that has never heard of you guys.
Oh, that's right.
That's true.
Okay, so just we don't want to exclude them and leave them totally confused. So just do a really brief intro of Horse Speak, what you guys do, so that they understand. And then I want to dive into this conversation because I think this is really interesting.
Cool. So basically, we've reframed it. We're calling it PEBLS. So it's the
precise equine body language skills.
Right.
So
cool. So PBLS. So pebbles. Drop a pebble in the pond.
When you say horse speak, people think psychic typically.
Yeah.
Like we're going to talk telepathic to the horse, or I already talked to my horse, or things like that. So it doesn't describe anything about what we're actually doing.
Right.
So therefore, we've been since the book has come out in 2016, we have been like, how do we best describe, and
what it is and what it does.
And it's like, yes, it's a practical system for understanding equine body language.
Which is also blah, 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 blah,
right?
Okay, can you guys up your volume, by the way? Somebody's complaining that they can't hear you as well as they'd like.
Oh, that might be on their end then.
Yeah.
We
turn ours all the way up.
Yeah.
So basically what we do is we have done the research to understand the microgestures that horses make between horses. So it's how horses communicate with other horses about their basic values, their basic needs. So not just hierarchy, that's an obvious one, but when you for instance, when you see,
so for the technical thing, Wendy has an reignited a microphone that is secular from her computer.
You mean
separate? Well, it's an add-on. Right. We have just our computer microphone. So, then Wendy might have done an adjustment. So therefore, thank you, Wendy, for your back office work, but that could be a difference in our sound.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if I can't turn it down a bit, but I can turn it off while you're speaking. I don't know if that helps.
I don't know.
Alrighty.
Okay, carry on, Garth.
So basically what we wanted to understand was, how do horses help other horses to feel calm and safe and secure? Because when you approach a group of horses that are out somewhere, they're in a paddock, they're in a field, whatever, 90% of the time, what you see is horses standing still. Maybe they're eating their hay, whatever, but they're not running around like crazies. So the fact that they're not running around like crazies, and that their brain is literally designed to pick up any slight change in the environment because they're a prey animal, means that everything about being a horse with other horses is designed to help the group feel safe, to feel secure, to feel relaxed, to be able to switch into parasympathetic, do my digest and rest. And when we show up, we bring a lot of excitement to them. And so that's the opposite of that. So what I wanted to know was, how can we do less, but do things so effectively that it creates more of what we really want? So by understanding what horses specifically do with each other using microgestures, postures, signals to help each other feel safe, calm, secure, and chill, and like they can just be together, how can we replicate that with some of our basic handling skills? So from the moment you arrive to the moment you start riding, and even through the ride, what are the core body language essentials we can imitate that tell the horse more than just calming them, which is, there's some great books out there like Calming Signals, and there's really good stuff, information out there. But this is more than that. This is actually answering their question, like, hark, who goes there? I hear a noise. I smell a smell. Something's bothering me. I feel afraid. How can you help the horse to feel actually safe and calm and connected with you, so that you look like the type of leader that the horse's leader looks like? Because it's
or even better. Some leaders aren't.
Or even better.
Or even better.
Like, one of the things actually I was thinking about this morning, and like, what are we going to talk about together with Wendy, is like being able to show up for the horse and have the safety and protection messages that are so key to the horse feeling safe, so they can feel able to do what we are asking them of them.
Right.
And so how we can be like, hey, horse, how are you today? How can I help you be safe? Instead of, hey, can you protect me? Whoops.
Hey, can you...
I just changed the scene so we can see you better.
Well, mostly what we expect of horses is obedience, like an obedience training, or we expect them. Some people even are like, I want the horse to protect me. I want him looking out for me, which is not terrible.
Right.
But if they're sort of an either or. So either there's a leader who's like, there's mom and the baby. You just go back to mom and the baby. And the mom watches out for predators, watches out for potholes, watches out for snakes and bees and whatever could go wrong. And doesn't say, hey, kid, go up to that log and see if there's, a snake over there. They go and they do all the scanning and checking and providing and securing. And all the messages mom gives to baby is how to stick with me because I'm making good decisions. And then later when the baby matures and grows up, that's a greater message that the herd provides until the baby becomes a member of the herd that could also provide that message. So it's a growing, vital experience for horses. And if we can understand what those core messages are, we can just imitate them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now just tell us what PEBLS stands for again. PEBLS.
Precise Equine Body Language Skills.
Awesome. So basically, because people didn't understand, they got confused with what horse speak meant. You've come up with this acronym, and yes, what you do is very precise. I've seen you work. It's obviously equine, even though I know that it works with other animals.
Right.
Yes.
Body language skills is clearly because it's a nonverbal communication.
Yes.
It's actually so much of a spatial communication in so many ways.
It is. You're
Totally.
absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about experimenting. That's like one of the things that is so neat, to be able to have like a whole bucket full of different ideas to be able to try, whether it's something about the theory, something about a mechanic, something about like, hark, who goes there? Stop scaring my horse. That you can be like, like I'm in this experiment right now with our herd because
you changed the feeding
arrangement. Well, there was the feeding as well as I'm changing how I'm bringing them out of the barn. Right now, I am putting them in their stalls overnight. And so it's been how interesting with my horse Jag, who I let her loose and she goes into the hay room and she'll hang out. And typically I had been bringing all the horses by her and as she's in the hay room and that's bringing them out to the paddock. I changed that now. And she would literally stay there till be the last horse because I'm eating all the hay out of the hay room. And now I decided, why don't I take everyone for a little extra walk on the way out to their paddock through the indoor, which is in the opposite direction of the hay room. And what has been happening is I'll get Rocky outside, Jag will hang in the hay room. And as soon as I get that second horse on the halter or lead rope, it doesn't matter if it's Bowman, if it's Mummy, or if it's Luna, Jagger is like, wait for me. And she comes going into the indoor arena. And I was like, this is really neat to be able to like experiment and be like, what is her need? And because I know we have hay nets now. And the interesting thing about trying to make their environment feel safe, because I am putting it in the spooky corner, way far away from the gate. The road is probably like 40, 50 feet away from where they're eating. And so how do I make that environment safe? When, especially if the mentors are off doing other things and the three ladies, Jagger, Mummy, and Luna, are in there by themselves. So it's been so fascinating to create what we would call a chessboard, their environment, so that they, even if the protectors are not in there with them, they feel comfortable to be able to eat.
I think you bring up such an interesting point because I think so many people don't realize that just changing one pathway or one object or one thing totally changes the interaction. And just listening to you, I can't help but think of my Feldenkrais training, because when we were doing our Feldenkrais training, if you were laying on the floor and somebody's shoes were too close to you, it changed the way you moved. So like when I'm doing Feldenkrais live in person and I see people have their books or their glasses or their drink or something, I go and I move it. I move it away from them to change their body experience, because just having it too close limits movement. And so, it seems, unless you're tuned into this, you don't realize that an object totally changes the way things flow. And if you look at airflow, if you ever see like the wind tunnels and you change one little thing, now the air flows in a completely different direction. Well, horses are like that air. They start flowing in different directions when we make such a little change. I think that's so cool that you're now experimenting with your horses in terms of just the chessboard and making a subtle change and then watching how everybody reacts to it.
Yeah. And just for people to know who don't know, why we call it a chessboard is to represent a grid in the environment that the horse lives on. And because when you observe them, and we've observed thousands of horses at this point, thousands of hours of video, when we're analyzing video, we're often doing frame by frame. So sometimes the only way to see some of the more subtle things is to literally go frame by frame. So a 2-minute video could take 2 hours to look at because there's so much there. And we put, I don't know how many years into doing 3 or 4 or 5 years, something into doing that, let alone the other stuff that we already researched. So when we say they actually are responding to a grid pattern, they really are. We do have some drone photography that shows from an aerial pattern, horses making their poops in a geometric pattern, depending on whether they feel safe or they don't feel safe, or to define an area to go in or an area to even stay away from. And noticing like when people go in and clean up the poop and the horses go and make the same pattern.
I think people don't realize when you come up with something as elegant as PEBLS, the hours, days, months, and years that go into simplifying it down to something that you can actually present to someone else and have it make sense.
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
We've
been throwing spaghetti at the wall for years to figure this out, and it feels so good internally to be like, oh my goodness, I think we finally have arrived.
I mean, Horsepeak is the name of the book. It's still the surface name of everything, but it's just helpful acronym. But and again, what you said to make it useful to other people, we've been invited to do some research with neuroscientists out of Texas. And
cool.
So that's been really, really cool. And she sought us out because some research that she was doing, but she needed someone to analyze what the horses were communicating, because she's like, I can't do that part. So we participated in that, and that led to her setting us up with an HRV monitoring for us. Back
cool.
when I told you about that with Robert.
Yeah, but HRV is really advanced. In other words, back in 2019, they were like talking about how it wasn't really a good indicator for horses, but that was 5 years ago now. Yeah. And the equipment has really changed, and there's a lot more data and research coming out that it's a lot more accurate, that I think can really help us with measuring. Right?
And even regardless of like understanding the resiliency that's getting, that you're focusing on with the HRV, to be able to just look at their heart rate in certain, what I mean? Like you can definitely be like, that heart rate is going really fast. They're standing there not moving.
Not moving.
Their heart is going a mile a minute. So it's just like, we can just like really simplify it, and then we can like go into the HRV thing. So in a couple of years, Dr. Jen is actually, she's an amazing person, and such a beautiful neuroscientist that she actually just got approved for 3 grants, all within like 6 weeks of each other. Wow. So, and one of them is with a HRV study. So she's going to be tapping into that world, because she has been ultimately with doing the neuroscience stuff.
Yeah. That is super cool, because, back in 2015, when I was at Equitana the first time, I had a horse that was standing there totally still, and they put a heart monitor on him because the people were there. And it was so fascinating, because I could stand at his right front and his heart rate was 40, and I could stand at his right hind with no visible change in this horse, and his heart rate went to 160.
Yeah.
Right. And that horse was showing me that there were, it was inconsistent. And that's why I say the equipment now is becoming so much better that we can actually collect the data that we really need to make good observations and statistically prove this stuff. Right. And that's
and what we're looking for in the research that the beginning research that we started with her, just she wanted to see, like, does this work?
Yeah. Is it even possible?
Is it even robust? And she determined it is robust. So she's pretty happy with the results. But one of the things that we want to do going forward is to create a map of what the microgestures are in a horse who's obviously experiencing stress.
From, like you said, from like
still.
40, their heart rate's at 40 to 160, there were some micro changes. So then being able to map, but that is filming it, slowing it down, watching every micro movement that they're making, nose to tail, so it is one of those things that it is. But that also, with that being said, when we as a human can be aware of our own personal nervous system, and we are like, I feel good, I have no aches and pains within my nervous system or in my muscles or anything, and then you get near a horse who is stressed, his heart rate is at 160, what changes happen in yourself? Because that nervous system is going to take over. And that's part of the other thing that we're teaching, with bringing that active awareness into the human body. So therefore you can walk up to the horse like, maybe I need to take a few steps back because my nervous system just got hijacked.
And Wendy, how many of us were taught to ignore that stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But how true it is. And the only way you can evaluate is you have to know your own system first. You have to know what's yours, right? Yep. And on any given day, what's yours, because otherwise you think it's you, or you don't know it's, it's too confusing. So this is super fascinating stuff you guys are doing. And it kind of fits in with where we're going to be doing some research with Surefoot. I'm really excited. I had a great conversation with a veterinarian who's interested in, I turned down my mic, folks. I did. I already turned it down. But I'm going to be doing some research. And one of the things that I think fits in with you is the ethology mapping that exists, that I think could use some work, could be embellished on, because when I looked at that ethology, it didn't have things like relaxed and sleepy and calm. And and that's if we're going to know this is a horse in pain, we need to know this is a horse not in pain.
Yes.
Right? And this is a horse that's concerned versus this is a horse that's about to, and that's all those changes in the muscles in the face that change the features that you're reading, those micro movements, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And they have the same number of muscles, soft muscles in the face as we do. So
yeah. And that's why they can do the ethology.
Yeah.
And so to circle back around to what we were talking about, getting to know yourself better, that brings us back to the original topic of when people come to our house, that's part of what we're working on with them as well, is for them to be like, what is mine and what is coming from the horse? Right. And because, again, we know our horses, and we typically, they have kind of a similar lesson with each person. Like Jag loves to do the one step. That is her thing. She's like, we are going to do one step and we're going to do it.
And then we're going to see how we feel.
And yes.
But I have some fun information for you, Wendy. So Robert, who's been renamed Bowman, so that's his new name, Bo or Bowman. His healing journey was really extraordinary because we exposed him to the clinics that would come as just curiosity to kind of see what develops naturally. And one of the controls that we put in is we're not overdoing anything of anything. We're just really seeing what evolves if he's met with a certain kind of quality and if he feels understood. So how can you tell if a horse feels understood? There's a lot to that, but basically there's a way to give some messages that horses feel understood. So we provide that, and then the whole clinic provides that. And what Robert started to bring, or Bo started to bring in the last couple of sessions, Wendy, was that he's looking at people saying, I see you, I understand you. And one of the things he suggested for the groups of people, that they should stand on surefoot pads. He looked at the pads, because we had pads out for him. We're like, this is your healing journey, Bo. What would you like to do? He looked at the pads and he was like, he looked at their feet and he looked at the pads and he's like, they need it.
Yeah. No, it's really true. It's really true.
Yeah.
And he had everyone standing on pads and he's inspecting. And when he feels like someone has, gotten more regulated or they're ready somehow, then he would go greet that person and be like, okay, you come on in. And if someone stepped off the pads prematurely, he'd look at them like, get back on that pad.
That's really funny. And it grounds people. I mean, I've put people on pads and seen amazing changes happen. And so it's really interesting that the horses have picked up on just how much they can help the people.
Yeah, he went on them a little bit the very first time when we brought him in there. And then he was like, that was interesting. And it was very clear. He was like, they need it.
It was so clear.
He's like, I'm good now. Thanks.
And then since then, he does it every time now. He's like, he sniffs the people who need the pads. And he even will no, they need an orange. No, they need a yellow. No, he'll like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's cool.
So I was like, I couldn't wait to tell you that because
that is super cool.
He's like Bowman approved.
Yes.
That's super cool. Okay, so you've been doing clinics at your place now, and you've done how long you've been doing this now? Because you weren't doing this last time I talked to you.
We did our first clinic in last October, not like this past one, but in 2022. Yep. So we did 2 then, and then we did February, and then we did 5, I believe, at the house. February to October. Yeah.
So with a herd that knows what you're talking about or is educated, let's put it that way, what is it that they, I'm going to ask this question, what is it that they want from the people that come to your place to do the clinics?
Let me think about that for a second. So this is a body language. And so to be communicating in a nonverbal way, you have to feel comfortable in your body. And so a lot of us don't feel that comfortable. It could be illness, injury. There could be a trauma memory. There could be we're not paying attention to it. We just, tune it out. Any number of reasons why people are not that comfortable or not that familiar. So I would say the number one thing that our horses try to do is help people get in their body. Hence, Bo saying stand on the pad. So each of our horses has a way. So like Mummy horse, we'll usually say, are you sad? Do you need a hug? And she'll wrap her head and neck around people and then they start crying. Or Dakota will say, because Dakota's blind. And so the cool thing about her is her extra senses have become like spooky. And someone can touch her like this on the shoulder for one 1 second. And she's like, I got you. And then she will actually micro adjust her body while the person holds on. And she wants them to follow her and mirror and do the same thing. And then they're like, oh, epiphany.
And
So
Coda's lesson really is about your pelvis.
Yeah, Coda's always about the pelvis.
Because she is what we call, and she's zero inside, so she's calm inside. But when she gets fancy, she's like a fire-breathing dragon. And so, you know, that it's a lot of energy to contain. Riding her is so exuberant and exciting, but if you need her to be also listening. And so it's all about the pelvis.
Right.
On the ground or in the saddle or bareback or whatever, it's like when you don't have awareness of your pelvis, she really will take over, and she is blind. So then it can be like, oh no, Coda, you're going to walk into the wall.
And she's like, so, right, because you don't know where you are.
Where's your pelvis, woman?
This is so fascinating because, you know, Dr. Feldenkrais was a judo master before he created the Feldenkrais method. And judo is all about capitalizing on the imbalance of the other person's pelvis. Yep. Bottom line. Bottom line, right? It's all about, yes, it is all about the pelvis. And so the awareness of where someone's pelvis is tells you where you can come in and throw them. And so that judo influence is in the Feldenkrais method. And it's, you know, it's the whole body, but the pelvis is a huge piece. And then I remember, like, this is going back to 99. I went out west to work with some people that were doing horsemanship on the ground, and I was watching them. And I walked up to this one guy and I grabbed his pelvis and I shoved it underneath him while he had the horse on a line. And the horse completely changed and did exactly what he wanted, but he couldn't get it until I shoved his pelvis up underneath him. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's on the ground or on the horse. It's it's it.
Yeah, because they're mirroring us. And that's like, you know, sometimes a horse-human relationship, you know, you have a bad right ankle, well, then the horse might have a bad right ankle too, because you're doing that favoring thing. And so then we compromise in other body parts and all that stuff. It's just, it's really fascinating to become aware. Yeah.
And, you know, there's some very fundamental basic principles when we're dealing on this planet, because gravity is the law. And right, it's the law. And so it's influencing everything. And especially how we move, and our skeleton is the structure that holds us up, whether, you know, anything with a skeleton, that's all mammals. Right. And do you know about osteocalcin? Have I told you about osteocalcin?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So there's research now. Osteocalcin is a hormone released in the bones. And so in adrenally actimized mice and people who do not have adrenal glands, they can still have panic attacks because of the osteocalcin released from the bones. And that's in everything that has bones. So you think about it, before there were complex structures and you had a structure of a bone, right? To trigger the flight reflex, you release this hormone. And so when you go to, like with Surefoot, when I go to pick up a leg, I'm not just picking up a leg to put it on a pad. I'm picking up a leg to assess the quality of the movement in the leg.
Right.
And if it's stiff, I already know the horse is in flight, even if he's not moving. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, if you do Surefoot a bit, suddenly the limbs get softer and looser, and it's easier to place them in a pad and they can stand. So, you know, it's, the research on this hormone osteocalcin is quite fascinating, and it's everything that has a skeleton, right? So horses, dogs, cats, people, we've all, you know, all mammals have a skeleton, and that's really the way I interpret that is that's really the initial trigger to the flight reflex, as opposed to adrenal glands. Right.
That is really interesting. It makes sense on an evolutionary context.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why it makes so much sense to me.
Wow.
And so, you know, when we start to look at a horse and we see his posture, right? Not his conformation, but his posture, and you see a horse with a stance that's either somewhat rigid or braced, you already know that that horse isn't in homeostasis at a fully deep level. Like, it might be okay, but it's not a complete level, because there is a stiffness in the bony structure. Now, obviously, some bones have to like do their job so that we stand up, but that's why they have a locking mechanism in the stifles and that sort of thing. Is they're not using their joints to be stiff; they're using their locking mechanism to keep them up. So, you know, it's like such a fascinating piece of information that just, you know, and it's really funny because I don't know if you know who Piper Clem is. Piper Clem is the plaid horse. And I had her for a webinar the other day, and she's a PhD. And I started talking about osteocalcin. She says, yeah, that was what my research was about. Only it was way back when we didn't have enough information on it at the time that she was doing her research. So now, you know, it's the same thing with HVR. Is science is moving forward. It keeps moving forward and advancing, and these tools get more easy to use. We understand them better. We can interpret them better. You know, this.
Well, that just makes me think like something that sounds simple, like lifting up the hoof. Then it's like, okay, to then be like, okay, so you're not picking up your hoof right now. Where is all the weight distributed?
Correct.
And so then it's like, okay, so may I ask you to pick up this foot? Pause, look, oh, can you readjust yourself so therefore you can give me this hoof? And that's like one of the things that I think that people can fall into. It's like the horse needs to do the thing right this second, but they're totally out of balance to be able to do that. They need to shift their entire body backward or whatever, if you're asking.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Whatever. And so then they can actually do what you're asking them to do.
Right. And so when you think about your therapeutic backup and you're checking to see, can this horse actually soften in the joints to do it?
Yeah.
Right. And if they can't, right, if they're resistant, it's because they're already in a parasympathetic state or autonomic nervous system state, a sympathetic state, that's blocking them from being able to respond. Responsibility. I always think of it as able to respond.
And
Me too.
Find also with like the therapy backup is a lot of times horses are really stuck in their atlas area. We call it the follow me button area. So therefore the messages aren't able to go past their head. They like freeze. They're just like a horse
like us,
head.
a talking head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, you see it all the time. Like there's no body. Yeah. It's I turn my sound down and move my mic away, and hopefully everybody's happier with that.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't been getting yelled at anymore, so.
It's like, yay, I have a new microphone, and then it's blowing.
Well, I've been using it just fine with other webinars and haven't had that problem, so I don't know what.
Well, I mean, it's where we don't have a mic, so maybe that's making a.
I think that one of the things that is trying to get cleared up, and I think a lot of people are taking a stab at clearing this up, which is great, right? And we're one of the people who's trying to clear this up. Is that for thousands of years, people have made a couple of assumptions about horses, partly because we didn't care. Like, it's my truck. I don't really care what it feels like. I just need it to work. And partly because we also had a lot of assumptions about ourselves, and they were very different, like, points of view, not only 100 years ago. So, our ideas about the world and ourselves and how things work has been evolving. And one of the things that the human race generally assumed about horses is that they didn't feel pain because they don't make the yelping sound. So they're not equipped with the ability to go, "Ipe, ipe, 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 ipe," and they don't make that sound. They can scream in pain. If it's a big pain, they can grunt, they can do those things. But generally, if you hit them, they go, and they try to avoid, and they do different things. Mostly they cower. Sometimes they'll react and become aggressive, but mostly they just cower and become submissive. And so you could find this in a lot of historical books about horses, about them not having a pain response. And there is this idea that they had a brain the size of a walnut. That's also a big mythology. There's a lot of mythologies that follow these horses around, and it caused people to have a negative anthropomorphic cast or overview of horses, where we'll call them stupid, we'll call them numb. Oh, he's dead in the ribs. Nothing. All those things are not true. It's actually an anthropomorphic view of the horse. For a horse to be stupid, for instance, would mean the horse has the ability to understand right from wrong and is choosing to do something wrong. That's a prefrontal cortex thing, right? That's not a horse thing. So horses are usually responding to pain, fear of pain, or environmental challenges, like they're afraid of something in the environment, or they're just plain out confused, and they've been confused for long enough that they're just shutting down and they don't want to respond.
This is something that Linda Tellington Jones said, and I remember her saying back in 1985, pain, confusion, and lack of understanding. And yet I agree with you that we are fighting thousands of years of habit, pure and simple habit, how we look at horses and how we continue and propagate these myths and misconceptions instead of stopping and taking a moment to reevaluate.
Right. And because think about it, back when we were asking horses to work for us, plowing fields, going to the market, whatever, that meant we were with them all day, every day.
And we depended on them for our livelihood and our life.
Yeah. But that we were with them all the time. And it's like with our dog or our cat or whatever.
Familiarity. You get familiar with that one that you depend on. You get to know each other.
There's a pattern. You
in
probably
some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And you also don't want your horse to break. Especially if it's the only one you have.
Well, but you also look at, like, if we look at the Amish, they're as hardworking as they expect their animals to be.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And as stoic in many ways as they expect their animals to be. So you can see that parallel between how they deal with people is how they deal with the animals. There's a parallel there. And I think, if we go back, like you said, 100 years, the parallel is you have to work really, really hard to just make a living to survive. Your animals had to do the same thing.
Yeah. Chop wood, carry water. We're not that far away from that.
No, we are not.
It's so weird to think about it. And like where technology is now, we're sitting in New Hampshire, you're in Virginia, and we have people from all over the world listening into our conversation. Yeah. Like it's beautiful. But
so we've even in the past, several years, we've evolved in our concepts so rapidly. And this is one of the things that I find so fascinating with horses is how they continue to evolve to be with us. Right? They continue to evolve to be with us because they went from food source, right, to transportation, to beasts of burden, to war machines, to just, companionship. And now they're therapy. And, I think that there's, a mutual, I don't know, on some level, a mutual understanding that we are to be together because we help each other. There's an evolutionary process. And I have to believe that horses benefit from being with us as much as just the fact that they're still here, right? In the numbers that they are, like apple trees.
I agree with you. I think also there's another myth that I've been busting out a little bit because there's this predator prey, which is a reality. There's a reality to that. They fall on the prey side and we kind of fall on the predator side on certain levels. But beyond that, I think the reason that we get along with them as well as we do and that they get along with us as well as they do is because we're both social. It's like if we get away from the adversarial and we just say we're all social beings.
And we all want safety.
Yes. No, and that's where you look at the nervous system, all mammals, safety is number one, right? Safety is super important. And that's a mammalian characteristic. And I agree with you completely. And that's why I tend to call horses flight animals because their response is flight. People's response depends. It could be fight or flight or freeze. We do the same things, but horses are more predominantly flight.
Definitely.
And somebody said with most animals, you can spot pain in their eyes. Well, that includes people. And again, it's that looking at the micro movements in the facial muscles that they're now studying because we have the same muscles in our face as a horse has.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see these, and that's where they came up with the ethology, with the pattern of facial expression. I think it was Dr. Sue Dyson, who came up with that ethogram. I'm pretty sure. I know she's got a video out about pain, but Sue Dyson's been doing a lot of educating people to the fact that this is what pain looks like. Because, and again, I go back to people. There's so many people that don't acknowledge their own pain.
Right.
And yet others can see it. So how can you acknowledge it in something else when you don't acknowledge it in yourself?
Yeah. And that's a loaded question.
I know.
That's a loaded baked potato question. There's many, many layers to
absolutely
us being taught to avoid and move on.
We're not going to talk about
but also even on the extreme side, there's sayings like "get back on the horse" and
oh yeah,
don't let him
cowboy
get away
up
with it,
and
cowboy up, and all these things which are
Be a
promoting
man.
promoting people to. I mean, the idea is to face your fear and not let your fear get the better of you, and that somehow extreme dominance and control of the horse is showing that you're having extreme dominance and control of your own fear, really. And that doesn't really work for anybody. And all of the research that's coming out on, like the polyvagal system, and the very first thing when you start to read Stephen Porges's work, who's the founder, the creator of the polyvagal theory, he's like, what we were looking for was how is the nervous system responding to safety? Does it respond to messages of safety? Yes, it does. And then what are the messages of safety? And then what does it do? What does the nervous system do when it feels safe? Because for a lot of the research being done on PTSD, it was like people who are stuck not feeling safe. Well, right. You kind of got to know the contrast. So what's it like if you do feel safe? And what does the body look like? What are all the maps and readings look like if the body does feel safe? So the whole premise of that field of study was on safety in animals. So they had a look at, well, let's make animals really, really unsafe. Let's freak them out and give them PTSD so we can look at their brains and look at their nervous systems and figure out, both sides from an animal perspective. And then also we're going to be able to figure that out from a human perspective because we do animal research. So that it obviously means that animals can get into these extreme states of stress and trauma because we can induce it in a laboratory. So then my feeling is it's really important for human beings to recognize that a horse may be responding to extreme stress that could be internalized. It might have nothing to do, like a new owner with a new horse, might have nothing to do with this owner. In fact, the fact that a new owner maybe is providing safety and they are so kind and they're so happy to have this horse, that may be the necessary recipe for the horse to come out of a freeze and out of a trauma response. And they're like, you feel so safe. This is what's really going on for me. Like that.
Oh yeah. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. That there's a rebound, if you will, or because all of that stuff that's been held. Yes. And from Stephen's work that movement is the key, right? And this is where I've worked with some guys that are former Marines. They're 80 to 100% disabled in order to be in this program. And I've worked with them. And, one of the guys was really interesting. And he described how in the Roman days, when these guys went and they had conquest and fought all these wars, as they came home, they marched, camped, cleaned their swords. Next day, marched, camped, cleaned their swords. But so by the time they got home, that slow, repetitive movement had released the trauma.
Right.
And in today's world, we don't acknowledge that you have to release the trauma. We just go, oh, well, so what? Drop you in a minivan with your kids 24 hours after coming out of theater and you should be fine. And it's like, right? Because the nervous system has to release that trauma, and movement is the way it does it.
Yeah. But it as you said, slow, predictable, safe movement that has rhythm, timing, feel, not forced, because if you force someone or something to move, it's re-traumatizing. So this is one of the tricks that we are in, where sometimes we have people bring horses to our clinics because they know the horse is traumatized. And they're like, what are you going to do with it? And we're like, okay, I got 4 days. So there's ways to first honor the freeze response. And that's an important phase for a lot of people, but it's an important phase for a lot of horses too.
Right.
My horse just freezes up and I don't know what to do. Well, breathe and make space for the horse to go through that stage. It's a necessary stage. And then what they'll want to do is walk. They will want to walk as long as they're walking in a safe place. And if you say, well, I'm going to take my horse for a walk into the woods, that's not a safe place. If you're in recovery, that's like boogeyman central.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, people say, well, why did my horse spook at that rock? Well, it wasn't the rock. It was whatever was connected to that, or a smell that they smelled or something. And so we have such a hard time understanding why the horse is doing so. Instead of just the horse is doing this, I have to create a safe space for my horse before I can do anything else. We get into the, well, why did you do that? And it's like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's like you do the safety and protection protocol, bring the horse in, touch 3 things, scan the horizon, have some objects there so then you can check out the objects with them. And then you're like, okay, so we've done the protocol. And then if they spook, then it's like, okay, why? What did I miss? Where can we?
Or they're coming out of freeze and they're coming into, they're getting in touch with fear for the first time, maybe in years, and they don't know what to do with it because they're not used to it. So I was going to ask you if you would talk a little bit about the Surefoot pads that actually work with trauma, because I know.
For sure. So it's really interesting. Hang on, I'll just change this screen so that let's see if that does it. No, how do I do that? Oh, no, I made you even bigger. Okay, still learning. Oh, there, diminish. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So with Surefoot, and it's kind of we didn't intend to create this, but we did. In other words, in our series of pads, we have something called the physio pad and the hard pad. Now, these are materials that are they only give to heat and pressure, and they have no lateral give. And it actually turns out that they are the highest rated impact foam on the market. And I think it's that, because of that, that's why I see this so useful with trauma. In other words, when you have a trauma, there's a hard impact. And so this material is designed to take an impact. And it's in riding helmets and football helmets, actually. And so in some fascinating way that I don't fully understand, when I use that with a trauma horse, and when I say a trauma horse, any horse, it's anything but calm, right? And when I'm starting with a horse, any horse is any, if I don't know the horse, if the horse has had an injury, if it's had an illness, if it's weak, if it's unstable, if it's an unknown, if I know it goes into a freeze state, anything other than okay. I start with this density because it's only going to give to heat and pressure. So it's going to give direct. And because it's hard, it's slower in its response. So something that responds too quickly can be frightening.
Well, because then there's instability really quickly. This is like slowly molds to their hoof versus dissipates.
And the physio pad is our lowest profile. It's only 1.5 inches. So it has 1 inch of hard and 1/2 inch of medium. And I will use it on the hard side, the colored side. This is what farriers are using with a lot of horses. And like I said, it's if a horse that I think there's anything going on, that's what I'm going to start with. And because it doesn't have instability, it provides stability. In other words, when I had a second surgery back in 2018, when I found out I had a bone spur, which I developed from my first surgery. And when they went in, they found out that glute medius was only attached by 25% of the tendon. So they put 2 screws into my greater trochanter and stitched up into the tendon and reattached glute medius. Joy. Okay. So then I could not stand on my left leg at all. And I was leaving for Costa Rica to do a retreat 4 weeks after surgery, and I'm still struggling to stand on my left leg. And I was taking my Surefoot pads with me, and so I brought my pads in to wash them because I wanted to wash them before I put them on a plane. And I was like, I should try this physio pad and see what happens. And so I threw it on the floor. I could stand on my left leg for 15 seconds without holding on, which I absolutely could not do without the pad. Like I'd step off the pad and no way, I'd have to hold on to something, and I'd step on the pad and I could stand on it. Wow. So this is the piece, like whatever it did, it provided the stability I needed to reconnect to my left leg, which my Feldenkrais person had said, like I kept like dissociating from it. But it helped me reconnect to my left leg. And so from my own personal experience of trauma, because surgery is trauma, you've been stabbed, very clean stab, but it's still a stab. And the whole dissociation I had from my leg as a result of all this surgery, I got to experience how that pad works in terms of just creating a feeling of safety that I could trust my leg and I could stand on it. So, you know, I can only assume that that's what horses are experiencing, probably at a much, much greater, deeper level, because their foot is so important to them. But from my own personal experience, I can understand why this works for these horses. And it's the only ones I use if I feel like there's any kind of trauma or anything. And obviously with Surefoot, they have a choice. So, you know, if they don't want to stand on it, it's fine. I just go to another leg or another day. Or
that's so amazing. I mean, I'm loosely studying neuroanatomy and neuropsychology right now, just so that I have a better, I could communicate with Dr. Jen better. Otherwise, she says a bunch of things. I go, I don't know what you just said. So I've been
I hear you.
Studying because I got to keep up. But some information I came across recently, and I've got like 8 different books I'm looking at, so I don't know which one it came from. But there is connection between the amygdala and the cerebellum, and so the cerebellum is for our body awareness and our proprioception, and like standing on your left foot or your right foot. But there is a connection to the amygdala, because if the amygdala is basically triggers fight or flight, it triggers like raw emotion. So if the amygdala gets triggered, your cerebellum shifts your stance, like you said before, posture versus what was the other word? Posture versus just went out of my head. The physique.
Confirmation.
Confirmation.
Yes.
So so when we're talking about getting triggered, we're saying that your posture adopts a stance.
Yes.
Right, as opposed to just how you're built.
Right.
And there is a trigger there. So that when you just said that, I kind of had like a little light bulb went off in my head.
Yeah, that connection between the cerebellum, where we are in our patterns of habits and movement, and the emotional. I mean, in the end, the brain is working as a whole, right?
Yeah, it works together. Yeah.
Right. But there's the sensory system, the proprioceptive system, where we are in space, that the ear, which actually, when you think about it, the ear bones are bones.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. They're bones in your ear, osteocalcin. So your bones, your proprioception, and your sense of safety are all tied in, because your brain stem is reporting whether or not you're feeling safe.
Right.
And as a being with a skeleton, we need to feel, like your gyroscope of where am I in space is operating along with your movement patterns, right? And what's really interesting to me is that when I set up a balance trail, I use all the Surefoot pads and I put people over them, right? And I use some other objects, but the people that have had a compromised balance, that have had some problem, right, or still do way better on the Surefoot pads than the person who doesn't.
Really?
Uh-huh. And that's because they have to pay so much more attention to their balance. They can't just go on autopilot and go, oh, my system's working, I'll be fine. They're like, my system is faulty. I got a faulty switch back there, and I better pay a whole lot more attention to keep myself upright.
Wow.
So it's super fascinating to work with these people.
Wow. Now we were on one of your trails, and it was so illuminating. Yeah. And then to walk it and then get back on solid ground and go like, whoa, yeah. And then do it again a couple of times, and have you then demonstrate like how a person's compensating.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what is straight, like when you're actually standing straight and you feel like, oh, I'm falling forward or something because you're not compensating anymore.
Right. Well, we have habits, right? And so I always, like when I let people go through the trail the first time, I'm like, you're like the horse in the field. You're moving however you move, and it's working. You can go through the trail and you're upright. Everything's great. But if I apply an external force, if I push on you, now you discover that your pattern isn't working as effectively as you thought. And I think that that's really true with the horses too, is that, we look at them and they're wandering around and they seem fine. But then when we put a rider on their back or somebody on their, a halter on their head, that's huge. When you think about the weight of a halter on a horse's head and the weight of the head, the length of the neck, the leverage that you have is huge.
It's huge.
Right? And now they can't do whatever they need to do to be stable and secure in their habit, because there's an external influence on them that, like I said, with the Feldenkrais, suddenly there's a pair of shoes next to me, right? Suddenly there's this other thing in my space, my sphere, that is impacting my ability to navigate through the space on my own.
Well, we have this amazing thing with palm down. We call it palm down, calm down, just so we can remember it, on the lead rope, where someone takes, like, if this is, hold that. So if this is the horse and this would be the lead rope, I'm this way. You could even put your pinky like you're riding, so then you can turn it up. You're like, oh yeah, that would be like a rein. And when you have your hand in this way, especially if you're using these fingers, and I call this then piano fingers, to lightly embrace, not gripping, right? Because you can even see when I grip what it does. Just
totally. Yeah, you engage your bicep and close your elbow.
Oh yeah, we have a real lead rope. I forget we have this here. So this palm down, calm down. You have someone stand here with a loose.
It doesn't help.
A loose lead, right? And just doing that, and it changes. And people on the other end go, "Holy cow!" And same thing, palm up like this, like that, and they see she actually moved.
Well, and it's, you're looking at fine motor control. Yeah. Right. And so when you employ fine motor control versus gross motor control, it's a completely different thing. But to do fine motor control, the body has to be organized in a certain way.
Yes.
And when not, you're going to go to gross motor control. And so, that's, again, people we get so habituated to gravity, we're born in it, that we don't even realize how we're compensating for it until something fails, until we blow out a knee, until we injure a shoulder, until, something happens to us that, or we start aging and, we've been texting for too long and working on our computers and then we're not using, or driving, and then we're not able to access the organization. And, people are always wanting to talk about core strength. And I'm like, it's not core strength you need. It's core stability, because the postural muscles, Feldenkrais called them the anti-gravity muscles, need to be doing the job of supporting you so that you can do all this lovely fine motor control stuff.
Especially when you're sitting.
Yeah.
Active sitting,
Actively sitting.
Because
it's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's like, when I watch TV these days and they have all these super fancy chairs for all these people, and I'm like, oh, you have a lovely exoskeleton, because the minute you let the chair do all the support work, your postural muscles go on vacation. Like, we don't have to work, somebody else. But then they're fatigued and they're not going to be there when you need them. So it's important to do things that keep those little postural muscles alive and happy and working. And, I just did a webinar with Martina Neerhart on kissing spine and, the multifidus muscle atrophies. Well, we have the multifidus muscle. That's the one that keeps all the little vertebrae like stabilized so that they're not crashing together. That takes those little tiny postural muscle, active sitting, being able to support ourselves in gravity so we can do all those lovely little fine motor control things.
And then think about the horse, who then has whatever physical stuff going on for them. And then we're not holding ourselves up well, and we're a sack of potatoes a little bit falling around. And then we're trying to micromanage their face or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have to, because we're falling. That's, you get into that gross motor control when you feel out of balance and you grab.
Back around to your riding lessons that you're going to be doing.
Oh yeah, the whole rider course, and this is where the whole rider course. It's a 8-week course with 2 live sessions every week. There are on-demand Feldenkrais lessons. You submit videos and photographs. We break it down. You have the lessons and we talk about it. And we've done one already last summer. It was fantastic. And the response from the members was terrific. So we're launching it again. You can go to thewholerider.com. Actually, it'll take you to the sales page and see more about that there. And you guys, what are you doing next now that are you home for a while?
Well, we are going to be doing a Winter Wonderland clinic at our house in middle of February. That is, I'm going to throw SharonWilsie.com. You can go to our events page, and that's where all of our events are posted. So that's the most recent one we're going to be doing. We had a beautiful experience last time, and it really was Winter Wonderland, where we had this perfect sprinkle of snow.
Just enough.
And
big
it was
flakes.
warm. and we were all cozy in our house. And then we went out and played in the pony. So it's a real intimate setting. Whenever you come to our house, there's no auditors here, so that we really get to have, it's about 10 people depending, usually participants. And we also have our certified practitioners here as support folks. So it's really, it's basically like 2 students per 1 mentor. So it's really cool. It's an amazing exploration. We're doing 3-day clinics and 5-day clinics here. And then we're actually heading out to Europe in April.
You're heading back.
Yeah, so we're going to be in the northern part of Germany at the beginning of April. And then at the end of April into May, we're heading over to Switzerland as well as back to Bavaria in Germany. And then we have other fun things going on. But we also do have our online courses too. We have our Building Your Foundation. It's a 12-week program. We have our Everything Means Something course, which is a 52-week program, which do offer live in-person experiences once a month, as well as our club, which is the best thing out there.
Best thing from sliced bread.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and so
it's awesome.
Tuesday. Yep.
It's really awesome to see how horse speak has taken off and that people are really embracing it. And I'm really glad to hear you're doing this research, because knowing from Surefoot, the question to get it mainstream, everybody's asking, well, where's the research? And you're like, well, I don't have any research. And now finally there is research. Actually in the UK, there was research that showed improvement of top line in 6 weeks, and measurable improvement in top line. And we want to do these ethology studies because you can clearly see the horses becoming into a more parasympathetic rest and digest state, even just going to the place where they're going to stand on the pads.
Yeah.
Like it's right. So I'm really excited about that kind of thing coming along this year. And so I think it's going to be a fantastic year. Yay. And
and with that being said, like so what we observed in nature, in natural situations where it's either a herd of horses that stays outside all the time, or in some cases we've been able to work with wild horses. And what we get to observe is how horses use objects in their environment to represent a safe space. And so then we look at, well, how can we replicate that for our domestic horses who are maybe in a stall or in this or in that? And so when a horse is approaching a Surefoot pad that they know has brought a feeling of relaxation, repair, parasympathetic, they feel good on it, then the pad itself represents safety. So wherever the pad is also going to represent safety in that space. So I wouldn't take a Surefoot pad and throw it down to Spooky Corner and be like, there you go, you're all set.
No.
Because it doesn't work like that. But you could certainly repair a horse who's felt scared of an arena, like 1 square at a time, by saying, well, let's do the pad close to the gate where you feel safe, and start to build some positive memories in that arena and then continue on. Because what we've seen is when we are doing reparative work with horses that have been scared in a space, there are certain ways to interact with the space itself, not just the horse. Yeah. And in the past, it was always like, just do something, fix the horse. But what we're seeing is we could do certain behaviors that we can do, like we can touch the wall, which is the strangest thing. But if you just touch the wall, you're acting like the mother who touched the log or touched the wall or touched the fence to sniff it. Are there bees there? And by doing that, you're representing safety, but you can also give an object. So it's really great. Even if the horse doesn't stand on the Surefoot pad, it could be a representation. They could sniff it. Yeah. They could just know it's there.
And because once horses start standing on the pad, they leave some scent behind, because the frog has a scent gland. So now the pad also smells like friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And friends who felt good.
Yes. Friends who felt good. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's just really cool. And I can't wait to hear how things are going with you. And so we're going to have to touch base a little sooner and keep in touch, because I miss talking to you guys. It's really fun.
I know it's always a blast.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy, for having us today.
Oh, no worries. All right. So look, you're my last guest of the year, and I just, wanted to end the year on a great note and start the next year.
Super
fab, my favorites.
Year, right?
Yeah. So, have a very happy new year, and let's look forward to everything that's going to happen in 2024. That's going to be fantastic. And maybe I'll even get up to see you guys if you're home when I get up to New England.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome. It'd be really great to, maybe we'll have to talk about that and see what we can work out.
Send me a text.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Shout outs for the club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time.
Right.
All right.
Bye.
Well,
Bye.
take care,
Cheers.
y'all. Happy New Year.
You too.